Let's party! Yeah! I am the One-Eyed Dragon!
Hailing from Oshu province, Masamune is the head of the Date clan. Born Botenmaru, he was the oldest son of Masamune Date. He entered battle at the young age of 14, and at age 17 would succeed his father as leader. Masamune is interesting in that a lot of how he's remembered today is based on actual aesthetic properties he possessed when he was alive, such as his crescent moon helmet and only having one eye. He lost his eye in childhood, and from this physical trait and his ferocity in battle, he would go on to be known as the One-Eyed Dragon of Oshu. In terms of information that is relevant to Sengoku Basara, there are three main facts about Masamune that need to be discussed. First, Masamune was a patron of Western culture and was one of the few daimyo who were accepting of Catholicism at the time. Masamune actually funded what was, at that point, Japan's most expensive foreign diplomacy mission to Spain, building the San Juan Bautista. It's believed that his daughter, Irohahime, could have converted to Catholicism, though Masamune's specific views on Christianity aren't super known, which could explain why, despite offering Christians aid, he isn't aligned with Saivism in the games. This interest and communication with foreign cultures is where his English speaking comes from. In addition, Masamune's caress, which is a non-bond styled caress, also references these interests. This style modeled itself after Portuguese armor to better deflect bullets. Or, in theory, it would deflect bullets better. The second fact that's important is that he sided with Ieyasu Tokugawa during the Battle of Sekigahara. This information is most relevant during the story of the third game, as that's where Sekigahara is covered, and it explains both the stages Masamune can play in his campaign, and the emphasis on his rivalry with Mitsunari. Speaking of rivalries, the third, and in some ways the most important fact, is that Masamune and Yukimura never really interacted that much in history. Yeah, if anything, Masamune most likely would have had beef with Tokugawa for many reasons, be it Masamune's generally unreliable attitude, his conquest of the north and how it gave him more power, or the fact that Tokugawa's trust in him was already tentative. The two had a complicated relationship. Though, it should be noted that there is a famous story ingrained in the minds of many that Masamune read poetry to Ieyasu on his deathbed. Masamune was a fan of poetry, so there is some part of this that is rooted in history, but to what extent is unknown. Though, considering the operatic and over-the-top nature of the franchise, such a story was sure to have influenced how he is portrayed. Despite that fact, Masamune and Yukimura were chosen as the two rivals for the franchise, and the influence of that can be seen into today, even though it doesn't have as much a bearing in history. All of these elements combined create a hot-blooded, energetic, and fun-loving depiction that, despite his party-loving exterior, is a man who does have some deep introspection, understands his role as leader of his clan, and constantly deals with the toll that war takes. It's really no surprise Capcom often compares Masamune with Dante, as the two are damn near identical in how they approach life. Masamune Date, more like Masamune Dante. So, between his dragon aesthetic, his English, and his alliances in the games, Masamune is rather faithful to real life, save for his rivalry with Yukimura. He serves as a good starting point to demonstrate how, despite the ridiculousness of the series, these games are made by people who know their history. Masamune, as is the tradition with many poster boy / mascot characters, represents the easiest to learn playstyle and, true to the fashion, is good for every situation without particularly excelling in any of them. His weapons of choice are 6 swords that he uses interchangeably depending on what attacks he's doing. By default, his normal art combo sees him utilizing 1 sword in a standard series of 8 swings. Masamune's move list is definitely the easiest to talk about for English speakers because they are all labeled in English following Masamune's use of the language. His skills in Sengoku Basara 1 are Jet X, Death Fang, Magnum Step, War Dance, and Hell Dragon. Jet X sees him swing all 6 of his swords upward before slamming them back down. It's best used at the end of a combo, especially considering you can't attack downed enemies in the first game, meaning using it at any other point will make it impossible for him to continue on. Death Fang is an upward slash that juggles opponents. In addition, if the button is held, Masamune will fly up with the enemy before slamming them back to the ground. Unfortunately, the held version of the attack can't be cancelled, meaning you have to commit to the full sequence. Death Fang is, without a doubt, Masamune's most versatile move in the first game. It can juggle opponents and extend combos, making it his only extension in the first entry. While the combos are unfortunately limited to being grounded, they still grant him access to a couple of routes. Magnum Step is a dash that hits opponents multiple times before launching them away. In essence, it's Masamune's version of Stinger, but given what little distance is covered when using it in this first entry, it isn't as easy to incorporate into your combo game. Like Jet X, if you are going to use it in a combo, it's best to put it at the end. Magnum Step can be useful for closing gaps, but, like Jet X's issues, you aren't left with much of a follow-up since you have to wait for the opponent to exit their down state. His next move, War Dance, is an install skill. It puts Masamune in the same state that he's in at the end of his Basara attack. In this state, his normal art combo is changed. Aside from that, there isn't much difference. And, in the first game, using any other skill will cancel this state. If War Dance is used while he's already in this state, he will instead swing his swords repeatedly like claws. His final skill in the first entry is Held Dragon, which sees him shooting a massive bolt of electricity. There's no real way to combo into this move, and it's mostly a super move that can be used to deal massive damage. It can be charged up before firing to cause more destruction. Masamune's Basara skill has him do a combo that adds more and more swords before finally concluding with War Dance. Your combos with Masamune are going to be simple in this first entry, and spoilers for all of the casts of the first game, but that's going to be true for all of them. And by no means should you take simple to mean bad. Again, as mentioned in my last video, it is mechanically and visually more interesting than what you get out of Samurai Warriors and Dynasty Warriors at the time. But don't go expecting Devil May Cry. Any kind of combo that can even border on being complex is going to be utilizing Death Fang to juggle enemies. Now you can use Death Fang multiple times in a row to juggle enemies repeatedly, which can create some fun instances. If you're not a fan of how Masamune's normal art combo feels, or the timing needed to cancel into his skills, then you're in luck, because he is the only character who has a unique item available to him in every game. It does the same thing in every game, putting him in a permanent War Dance state. And with this item equipped, you can use other skills while still staying in War Dance. While War Dance deals more damage than Masamune's normal combos, it can feel somewhat mindless to use, so do so at your own discretion. Sengoku Basara 2, beyond tightening the battle system in general, adds 2 new skills to Masamune's repertoire, Crazy Storm and Phantom Dive. Crazy Storm is a modified version of the claw attack that he could use while in War Dance in the first game. It has 2 different forms, one that he uses in his normal state and one that he uses in his War Dance state. Like a lot of skills that he has, it serves as a good combo ender. The same can be said for his other new skill, Phantom Dive. Phantom Dive has him attack enemies with all 6 of his swords before slamming them into the ground, sending shockwaves out. It has a bit of a longer startup than some of his other skills, but makes up for it with its reach, as the shockwaves do travel a good distance. There are also changes to some of his other moves. Death Fang's held version can now be cancelled, allowing you to convert into an aerial combo, bringing all of its high time qualities out. Jet X's downward strike can be repeated multiple times, allowing you to fully take advantage of it as a combo ender. Magnum Step gained additional hits and is now designated as an elemental attack. Hell Dragon was also designated as elemental, and its charge time is now indefinite. In general, Masamune's game plan doesn't really change. Death Fang is still your best friend for extending combos, but now you have a couple more options for ending them. Additionally, you have an easier time ensuring that your hit count doesn't go down, as these moves have faster wind downs. Sengoku Basara 3 onward saw some massive overhauls to the battle system. Specifically, instead of having 2 skills equipped, they're now attached to specific buttons and button combinations. I won't get into too much detail here, as I do want to have something to talk about when it comes to the Basara 3 video. Masamune's big change in this game is that all of his skills now have 2 different versions, one that's in his normal state and one that's in his War Dance state. You'll be primarily seeing Yukimura-den footage here because it is the culmination of all the gradual shifts he underwent between 3 and this game. His normal state versions of Jet X, Death Fang, Magnum Step, and Crazy Storm are the same as they've been in other games. Jet X does have some different follow-ups that are actually borrowed from his Devil King's animations, but otherwise they act the same. Now, it's in War Dance where things start to get interesting. In the previous entries, War Dance is useful, but it doesn't add much to Masamune's moveset to necessarily prioritize activating it. It's pretty easy to simply ignore it altogether outside of his Basara skill. From 3 onward though, War Dance changes the properties of his other skills. Jet X's follow-ups become more devastating and create more openings. Death Fang's juggle and knockdown hit harder and allow Masamune to rise higher up in the air. Instead of 1 dash forward, Magnum Step now goes further and has a follow-up, and Crazy Storm becomes even stronger than it has been in any entry beforehand, while still retaining its essence. These changes allow Masamune to continue his combo game after using his Basara skill instead of having to radically change what you're doing. Additionally, War Dance, on the whole, is a lot easier to cancel moves out of. In the first two games, War Dance moved so fast that it could be hard to stop an attack and go into another one. Basara 3 also introduced 3 ultimate skills that are assigned to the right trigger. For Masamune, 2 of these moves are unchanged from their previous iterations, War Dance and Hell Dragon. It's the third and new skill that needs to be talked about, Testament. Testament has Masamune charge up his blade for a single slash. If the attack is timed correctly, it can result in a one-hit KO. Sengoku Basara 4 added new skills using R1 plus square. For Masamune, this is a simple uppercut that leaves him airborne. To be honest, I don't feel it's as good as Death Fang, and because it doesn't change between his states, there isn't as many interesting things you can do with it. Though, I also suppose it staying the same has its own benefits. Masamune's new game plan is one that has him constantly changing between his two states, especially with how quickly you can shift into War Dance mid-combo. As such, it's easy to have a combo that incorporates both versions of every skill, taking advantage of either the War Dance ultimate or his Basara skill. Also, starting from 3 onward, Basara skills don't reset the hit count, so you have more reason to use them. Masamune has 2 other movesets in Yukimura-den, that of Botenmaru, his younger version, and that of White Cross, a new interpretation of his base moveset. Botenmaru is a simplified version of his normal moveset, swapping out 6 swords in favor of 1 wooden sword. A lot of the attacks emphasize placing pressure on the opponent and moving Masamune around them. It's really only used in 2 missions, one in story and one in extra mode. Overall, it's a moveset that's primarily here because he needed to be fought by young Yukimura, who does have a little bit more going for him. Like his base moveset, Botenmaru has 2 states, a normal one and one called Rampage mode, which can be built up by holding square. However, when it comes to his skills, there isn't too much to talk about. Ryuzu is a launcher, Ranbi is a beatdown, and Kikirin is a gap closer. The more notable moveset in Yukimura-den is his White Cross form. This moveset has all 6 of his blades drawn at all times. His normal art combo sees him wildly swinging his swords, concluding with a spiral forward. As for his skills, Deadly Cross has him swing his swords in a cross formation and functions a lot like Death Fang, being his launcher. Magnum Dunk is a souped up version of Magnum Step, having Masamune fly through the air before dunking his swords into the ground. The last part draws enemies in. Kill Shake has him spin in the air so fast that it creates a tornado. Like Magnum Dunk, this attack draws enemies in. Ground Dragon has him thrust his claws into the ground, sending bolts of lightning out that, once again, draw enemies near him. It's very reminiscent of Phantom Dive. White Cross's gimmick is that all of his attacks can be held down to have drastically modified versions. Specifically, these will place Masamune in Rampaging Dragon mode. These modifications are, Deadly Cross gets a follow-up, Magnum Dunk goes further with it drawing enemies in longer at the end, Kill Shake's Tornado lasts longer, and Ground Dragon's Lightning draws enemies in before shooting them over to Masamune. His ultimate skill in this state, Heart Bolt, has him place 5 of his swords down, and, using the 6th one, zaps between them, damaging enemies along the way. His Basara skill has him gather energy before launching a dragon. Following suit with his other moves, this attack concludes with the dragon coming back to him, drawing enemies in, and, like his traditional moveset, places him in a new state, that being the aforementioned Rampaging Dragon. White Cross's game plan sees him constantly linking one skill into another. Rampaging Dragon allows you to cancel each skill at specific times to continue the state, which then consistently draws enemies near you, ensuring they don't escape. Due to the moveset's ultimately limited tools, it isn't as complex as his base form, but it can still lead to fun and interesting combinations that stay true to the core of the series. Overall, Masamune remains the least changed throughout the series. Even his Botenmaru and White Cross movesets are extensions to his base rather than redesigns. Between the history reflected in his design and his ease of use, Masamune is one of the best protagonists in an action game, allowing the player to learn the mechanics while giving them clear ways to experiment. He's definitely on the easier end of the character spectrum, but that's not a bad thing at all.